Good evening. Welcome today. We're going to discuss licensure reciprocity and provide an overview of current issues and challenges associated with transferring professional licenses across state lines, as well as opportunities to advocate for change. Today, I'm joined by Jennifer Goodall, Director of Military Spouse and Family Programs for the Military Officers Association of America, and Kevin Brunch from the South Atlantic Regional Liaison for the Defense State Liaison Office. Jen and Kevin, welcome. And can you give us a brief overview of your role in your military connections?
Sure. Thanks for having us today. Again, my name is Jennifer. I work for the Military Officers Association of America, and our primary mission is advocating for service members, retirees, caregivers, surviving spouses, and military families. And so in my current role, I'm focused on military spouse employment, licensure, which is key for today, childcare issues, housing. If it deals with the military family, it's within my portfolio. And I come at it with a background of, I was a Marine for 7 years, and I've been a military spouse for almost 13. So it's anything that affects you affects me too. Off to you, Kevin.
All right. And thanks, Riley, for having us again. For me, we work directly for the military Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Military Community and Family Policy. Our big thing is we worked with state policymakers and other organizations on ways that states can actually assist our military families, our service members and families actually through state legislation. And we've been working this issue for probably since about 2011. So glad to be here.
And as both of you know, spouse employment, especially underemployment, has been a recurring theme since the inception of the Blue Star Family's annual Military Family Lifestyle Survey in 2009. And it directly impacts service member retention. The 2020 Military Lifestyle Survey highlights that 1 in 5 active duty service member respondents reported that they were concerned about spouse employment as a reason that would cause them to leave the military. And 67% of military spouses respondents reported being underemployed. Now, we also know that the challenges of transitioning licensure across state lines directly affects spouse underemployment, which really brings us to today's topic, which is licensure reciprocity. So the goal of that really fancy word is the goal of licensure reciprocity is to allow military spouses to transfer their license to a new state in a timely manner, as well as limit the need to recertify specific requirements. This way, the military spouse can quickly find employment in the new state. While there may be legislation that requires states to offer reciprocity, what we've noticed is that these laws may not always provide clearer guidance on how that reciprocity actually occurs. So, Kevin, I noticed that this year, the Defense State Liaison Office has identified several key issues related to spouse licensure as priorities for 2021. Can you tell us more about those priorities?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Thank you. Actually, again, like I said, we've been trying to work spouse licensure, occupational license issues, reciprocity, portability since about 2011. But our 4 key issues that we've added are enhanced military spouse licensure portability, which the ultimate goal now is for a military spouse to be able to get a license within 30 days of application with minimal paperwork. We've also want to make sure that as we've worked this, states have passed statutes that actually help military spouses. And we commissioned a University of Minnesota report a couple of years ago, and they discovered that quite a few of the boards were either unfamiliar with the legislation that had passed, or they had not even acted on it if they did know about it. So the second piece of ours was access. In other words, can the spouse, do the forms have a block for military spouse so that they know they're military spouses? And, so it was key for the websites. Can they go on there and easily find what they need to apply for the job? Licensing compacts have become very big for a military spouse clause that they are starting to put in there that would allow them to choose their home state to transfer that license. Currently working on 8 interstate compacts, most of them in the medical career field. And then the last one, of course, is we find out that teachers are such a large occupation for military spouses. We added that one to be a primary now because originally we had tried to do that but we found, there were different avenues for occupational license versus teacher certification. So we now have added that with the same goal of the 30-day license with minimal paperwork.
As a military spouse that works in education, I was really excited to see teacher licensure come out as a separate issue, because I do think there are definitely some differences between some of the other professional licensures and the teacher certification process.
Yep.
So in Jen, in your role with MOA, you often receive feedback from military spouses on their employment challenges. Like, in terms of professional licensure, what are some of the challenges military spouses are sharing with you?
I think one of the main things that we see is there are those big professions that everyone knows require a license in, like nursing, teaching, but then there's all the other ones. There's cosmetology, there's physical therapists, there's so many more people are impacted by this. I believe, and Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, about 30% of military spouses require a license to continue their occupation. And so what we found is that it takes too long, and we've also heard that there's not a one-stop shop for where they can get this information specific to their service or to their occupation, which hopefully we can correct some of that, because there is a good place to go to, but we'll touch on that later.
Now, as a licensed counselor myself and a school counselor, I've seen firsthand the challenges that teachers and other educators face as they attempt to certify in a new state. Like, for example, in North Carolina, a teacher waiting on their license to be reviewed can't work in that teaching, like they can't work as a teacher. They have to work as a substitute teacher, which means they take less pay until that license is approved, which could be a process depending on what the state of North Carolina is looking for. And the other is sometimes they find that they have to retest. So even though they've already tested or proven mastery in the subject area in a different state, North Carolina might require different testing to show that same mastery. So it becomes a really expensive process. For licensed counselors and clinical social workers, they face similar challenges in transferring supervision hours between states. And that can definitely cause a delay in even being able to establish your practice. And sometimes states will require them to repeat those supervision hours, which can be super costly because you pay for that. Now, on a positive note, there's been great movement towards offsetting costs associated with professional licensure for military spouses. Like, for example, the National Military Family Association offers a spouse scholarship that can be used for educational costs, professional development, supervision, and licensure fees. And even the DoD has a licensure reimbursement program. Kevin, hey, where can military spouses find more information about that DoD program?
The program, which was mandated a couple of years ago, allows the services to reimburse up to $1,000. The easiest way to find out about that is to go to the Military One Source site, and under SECO, which is the Spouse Education and Career Opportunities section, it actually has the breakdown for each individual service of what's covered and how they would go about applying for that reimbursement.
And we'll be dropping that link into the chat bar. Now, as we wrap up some of our discussion, I think it's important to emphasize the work that is being done to advocate for legislation and policy changes to improve licensure reciprocity, and how military spouses can become engaged in the discussion. So, Jen, as a former member of the MOA Spouse Advisory Council, I was able to see firsthand the importance of military spouses sharing their experiences, concerns through advocacy efforts. Now, what are some of the ways military spouses can advocate for licensure changes and become part of that movement?
So one of the main ways, especially for those in the lawyer profession, you can join the Military Spouse JD Network, which is a great opportunity. They're a grassroots organization, and they work with the individual state levels. At MOA, we focus primarily on federal level advocacy, but you can always come to us and let us know what you're dealing with, and we can research what's going on with your state, what their current practices are, and then help you organize. We can connect you with one of our chapters and councils that can connect you with those state and local governments. Additionally, that spouse council that Raleigh served on, we're always accepting new applications. So keep your just visit moa.org and you can find out when we're doing our next application period. But that group it's about 20 spouses, and they bring their priorities to us. And so if licensure is one of your hot button issues, you come to us, and then we get you involved in our advocacy role.
And for me, that was a great experience, because really what we're talking about is taking it beyond just telling your story, but learning how to engage with legislators, going to Capitol Hill, and really learning to connect with the people that make those changes. So I think those opportunities are great. And the site
And
that you mentioned,
Raleigh, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
By putting your face with that message, it has such a more significant impact to the people that are making those laws and making those changes. So it's not just an issue anymore. Now it's an issue affecting this person, this person, this person.
You're absolutely right, and that's what we saw when we experienced. And the other thing I would say, professional organizations are really, really important. So if you are in a professional organization, reaching out and seeing what they're doing in terms of advocacy. So, for example, I'm a licensed counselor, and so the American Counseling Association has specific divisions, and there is a military and government counseling association, and spouse licensure and reciprocity is one of their primary missions right now. So making sure you're involved in those gives you a chance to also advocate at the same time.
Absolutely.
Kevin, I know there. Oh, do you have something else, Jen?
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Kevin, I know there are a lot of moving parts when we consider licensure, especially when you look at the number of different professions that require a license. Now, as a military spouse, where can I track some of these legislative changes that are happening in each state?
Well, we have an excellent website. It's for legislators, but also for the civilian or not civilian, but our military folks can go there. And the website, I will make sure that you can put this in the chats, but it's HTTPS, and then it's going to be state policy, one word, .military1source.mil. And that we as we go through, there's 8 liaisons, 7 others besides me, and as we update these laws and statutes in the states, they will be placed into a map on that page for all 10 of our key issues, but especially spouse licensure, and they can go in and find out what the status is in that state, whether it be do they offer temporary license, expedited license, if the compact has been signed in in their particular occupation in that state. So it's all there.
And it's actually a really good. I stumbled upon it about a year and a half ago, and I was absolutely floored by how much information, and not just on like those specific areas. So if you're interested in K-12 education, you're interested in other legislation that impacts military families in those states, it's all there, and it's really well organized. So I definitely would encourage people to check it out and bookmark that page because it is updated frequently. So Jenny, Kevin, I definitely appreciate your time today. And any final thoughts or recommendations that you'd like to share that maybe we haven't discussed yet?
Sure. I think if you visit all of these resources and you're still a little bit lost, Kevin earlier mentioned SECO. They have amazing career coaches. Obviously, you're connected with Spouse Force, but there's so many organizations out there that are ready and willing to help you. So don't navigate it on your own. Reach out to these organizations. Reach out to the Defense State Liaison Office. They are here. We're all here to help you.
Your turn, Kevin. What you got?
Well, I'm gonna piggyback a little bit on what Jen said, and that was the fact that a lot of times as these statutes or not statutes, but bills go forward in the states, we're always looking for military spouses that have faced these problems, faced these issues, and it is fine for them to go before a committee and testify the barriers that they have faced. We always used to kind of say that facts tell, but stories sell. And that's the honest truth, that I can give them all these facts and they're great. But when I have a spouse sitting there saying that, it took me 4 months after my application was complete to get a license, and we're leaving in another 18 months to a new assignment, it'll really hit home for them. So, I mean, the key is to get the message out and let those folks know how it affects our service members and their families.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. I know for me, one of the things that I have found really helpful is there are, using Facebook, there are groups. So like you said, Blue Star Families has different career portals, and a lot of, National Families Organization staying in professional groups. So for me, I participate in one on Facebook that's about counseling. And it's all military spouses who work within like the behavioral health field. So it's a great place to find out, hey, I see it all the time, hey, I'm moving to this state, what challenges you face transferring your license. So that peer support can also play a really good role. So Jennifer, I like that you mentioned about the coaches, that having those coaches who can also help with that process. I mean, that's a lot of great information. And the challenge is, it really just touches the tip of the iceberg, and we're only getting started on what that means. And so organizations who are advocating for licensure need our feedback because they need to know where those challenges are. And, is that state truly meeting that reciprocity, or are they just offering a license transfer and still making you meet all these other requirements? Because that's not really what reciprocity is about. But before we sign off, I want to encourage our viewers to post the types of professional licenses they might be interested in. This way we can bring more information about those. Our future career portability spotlights will look at different careers with licenses, considerations for that career, and best practices for transferring those licenses related to those professions featuring military spouses in that career field. So we want you to let us know what you want to see in the future. Now, we're also going to post all the resources we talked about in our chat bar, so you'll be able to find those links. And then we definitely are interested in your questions and comments, and we appreciate your time. And I also recognize at the beginning of the hour, I did not introduce myself. So my name is Rolly Sampson, and I'm actually a military liaison for a school district in North Carolina. And Kevin and Jen, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us anytime.